Hello, I'm Anthony. The purpose of today's video is for us to have a really good think about exactly what is a filter. It's one of the most common effects that you'll apply to your music. I can't imagine a project in which I've ever not used at least one of them, and yet it can be a surprisingly difficult concept to actually grasp. Let me ask you this question by way of illustration. What's the difference between a filter and an EQ? Well, the answer is there isn't any. They're basically the same component. They're just doing different jobs. The reason why we have different labels or different names for these devices is because they serve different purposes. Now, I was chewing the fat with ChatGPT today, one of my best friends these days, and I asked it exactly that question. What's the difference between a filter and an EQ? As always, ChatGPT's answers are very long, but one sentence really struck me as particularly eloquent. Here it is. EQ is a specific application of filters used to adjust the balance of different frequency components of an audio signal. That sentence, that definition, the reason why I like it so much is because it serves two different jobs, and that's what we're going to talk about today. The first is to compare EQs with filters directly. They really are the same thing. It's a specific application of a filter. And secondly, it describes the purpose of what an EQ is doing. It's balancing frequencies across the audible range. That's one of the things that a filter can do. That's why it's a specific implementation of a filter. One specific instance of a situation where it's kind of handy to think about the definitions of EQ and filters is when you come to organize your plugins, because you've got your compressors folder and your reverb folder. And when it comes to thinking about how you're going to organize and label these various plugins, suddenly you've got a problem because you have to decide whether or not there's any functional difference between an EQ and a filter at all. And I've actually concluded there isn't. And we'll have a look at one particular example of a plugin today where the definition between EQ and filter is incredibly blurred. Anyway, enough preamble. Let's get into the deep dive. Let's try and figure out really what's going on when we filter a sound. Today we're going to play with a simple sawtooth, and I've used Hallian because it generates very mathematically accurate waveforms. Here's Hallian's sawtooth, looking as sawtoothy as a sawtooth can get. Now we're going to introduce our first filter. This is a low pass filter, and I'm using an EQ plugin to accomplish this task. Let's set the cutoff to exactly 2 kilohertz. I'll play a note. Here's my C again. Now we have a very different tone. Pull the volume down so that we can look at the spectrum analyzer. So here's the cutoff at 2 kilohertz. And you can see we have a 24 decibels per octave attenuation from that point onwards. So here's all the high frequencies being thrown away. Now, something that's really important to pay attention to, and this is genuinely important for you to understand when you're using filters, is that the cutoff is not the point at which attenuation starts. In other words, we're not throwing away frequencies above 2 kilohertz. And you can see that Pro Q3 is wonderful at representing this stuff because the visual representation is so good. Here's our cutoff at 2 kilohertz, and we have this kind of logarithmically shaped triangle of frequencies that are being attenuated behind the cutoff. In fact, we have a roll off up to about this point, and we have this very, very gentle attenuation until by the time we get to 2 kilohertz itself, we've already attenuated several decibels of frequencies around this range. This is called the transition band. The steeper your cutoff, and this is a 24 decibels per octave 4-pole filter. The number of poles in a filter is simply its decibels per octave divided by 6. I did a video about that a couple of weeks ago. I'll put a link to that somewhere. But this transition band, the point at which we have an all-pass filter, all of the frequencies are getting through, and an active filter circuit, this is the transition band. That's a really important fact that you need to understand. If, for instance, you have a low-cut filter, let's say you're attenuating woof in your bass or your kick drum, you need to appreciate that wherever you set this cutoff at, let's say 60 hertz if you're dealing with a kick drum, for instance, you've got a huge triangle of frequencies here that are actually being attenuated. And if your kick drum lives somewhere around 70 hertz, you need to know that that's actually happening. Now, the steeper you make your filter, the narrower the transition band. So when we go from 12 decibels per octave to 24, watch that triangle. Triangle gets smaller, and it's going to become increasingly smaller. So however steep this curve is after the cutoff, you're going to get an increasingly narrow transition band to the point where you do have an all-pass filter, you're letting all of the frequencies through. Let's go back to this comparison or distinction between filters and EQ. I'm using an EQ plugin here to generate a low-pass filter. This isn't something I would normally do during the course of my songwriting because the Pro Q3 is not imparting any flavor or personality to this cutoff. This is a surgical process used to attenuate frequencies. In fact, that might be an important job and that's completely fine in that context. But if I'm looking for the filter to add color to the sound or harmonic richness, I'm not going to use something as surgical as Pro Q3. So let's compare it with a plugin that's specifically designed to actually be a filter. I've jumped over to Halion B now, which is another instance of the identical Sawtooth plugin. But this time, instead of having the Pro Q3, I have the Filter Mini plugin. So this is one component that's been basically taken out of the Mini Moog. So we've just extracted the filter circuit and now this is usable as a filter plugin. I'm using the Mini Moog's filter because it's probably the most famous filter of all time and the one that's most famously described as being colourful and rich and harmonic and all of those lovely words that we're interested in when we're writing music. Okay, I've just volume matched these two plugins, so I can now A/B. The Pro Q3 is on Halion A, the Mini filter is on Halion B, and we can listen to the difference between the two. I've also set up a comparison channel so that we can actually visually see the difference. So that's the Pro Q3, and it's basically almost completely dominant. Wherever you can see a little bit of orange poking up behind the background, that's the Mini V being slightly louder. You can't hear it, you can only hear the Pro Q3, but you can visually see a little bit of Mini V poking up. When we switch over to listen to the Mini filter, now you can see that the Pro Q3 is much brighter, and all of this extra stuff around the 2 kHz cutoff frequency, above and below, this is the transition band, all of that is adding to the colour, and in my personal opinion is what makes the Mini filter a much superior job if you're doing a colourful low-pass filter cut. There, now that's a little bit easier for you to see. So all of these blue bands is where the Pro Q3 is letting frequencies through that the Mini filter is attenuating, so it's a dramatically different frequency distribution. In the case of the Mini filter, something that's pretty important to understand because it's a really significant feature of the sound is that as you change the emphasis or resonance, it dramatically adjusts the transition band and the entire sound gets quieter. Listen. So as I'm introducing the emphasis and you can see the cutoff starting to appear, the volume of the sound is also going down. You can see that obviously in the output, but you can hear it get audibly quieter. And there's the volume going up. So that's the transition band expanding and contracting as I change the cue, the focus, the sharpness of the angle that I'm concentrating around the cutoff. The next plugin that I've chosen to talk about today is the IK Multimedia TR5 EQ81. So this is an emulation of a Neve preamp and EQ system, the 1081. And in the case of this particular module, I treat it like an EQ. So this is really for me to do that frequency balancing operation. We have 4 different frequency ranges, and something that I wanted to talk about in this particular plugin's case is a comparison between the 2 upper frequency bands because they cross over. What I've done in this demonstration is I've set up my 2 upper frequency ranges at 6.8 kilohertz. So basically these 2 knobs are supposed to do exactly the same job. What we're then going to do is boost the upper mid all the way to maximum. And on my second channel, where I have a second instance of the same plugin with everything else otherwise identical, this time I'm boosting the high frequency range. So we're boosting 6.8 in both instances. We can do a visual comparison of that. There's A, and here that orange band is Halion B, really pushing that high frequency range. Even though they're both set to 6.8, they're operating over different functional ranges. Don't get tricked into looking at a number and thinking that every plugin does the same job. Here's an instance of the same plugin supposedly operating on exactly the same frequency, doing a dramatically different job. Just before we head away from this plugin, this is just a kind of a general observation of the difference between shelves and bell curves. The EQ81 has the opportunity to enter bell mode with the buttons on the low and high frequency ranges, and by disengaging that we turn it into a shelf filter. So if I press a key, I've got my volume all the way down here, so I get the sound up and running and I switch between shelf and bell, you can see here's the very gentle bump of the bell, and with the shelf it's flatter and all of the higher frequencies are being boosted because now we have, exactly as the term describes, a shelf. Now this bell-shaped filter is called a peaking filter, so it effectively operates over a range of frequencies with a cutoff and a resonance. In fact, in the middle of the bands, we have the opportunity to specify the sharpness of this spike. Let's switch back to A, which is this module over here, get it up and running. Now if I introduce the high Q, there's my bump suddenly appearing, accentuating those frequencies all the more. The upper frequency bands don't have that feature, but instead we have the option to switch between shelving and peaking. The boundary between filter and EQ gets stretched to breaking point when we look at the Pultec EQP1A. So this is the Pultec equalizer, EQP, a very famous piece of equipment. You'll find it in pretty much every recording studio in the world, and it's used to colour the sound. Well, isn't that the job of a filter? And in fact, when you look at the controls, it kind of presents itself as a filter as well. We have a low frequency range and a high frequency range, and these four controls across the top basically describe themselves as filters. The attenuation is a cut, so this is low cut, this one is a high cut, and the opposite applies the other way around. So our low boost could be treated as a low pass, and our high boost is a high pass. So that's me describing it as a filter, but then I say, well, this is used to alter the balance of low frequencies versus high frequencies, and then we stray more into the definition of what an EQ is. So it's in this very, very strange kind of hybrid world, and it just makes a complete farce of trying to draw the distinction at all. Don't bother, because there's just absolutely no point. What I want to demonstrate today is the really unusual way that the Pultec actually goes about colouring the sound. On track A, I've set up a boost and attenuation at the same value, both set to 12 o'clock at 5 kilohertz. And track B, the Pultec is completely flat, everything's off. Now if I toggle between these two tracks, you'll visually see and hopefully hear a very slight change of colour to the tone. So there's the upper frequencies of Halium B poking through. That means that when the boost and attenuation at any particular frequency is set, we're talking about the high band here, the attenuation is more aggressive than the boost. In other words, we're losing those high frequencies, and so the flat plugin on track B is letting more of those high frequencies through, and that little strip of orange is poking through here. It's more subtle the other way around. So if we now listen to the flat Pultec, and we're looking for a blue visualization to tell us where the coloured device is poking through more, I'll take a screenshot of this and show you up in a blown up form because it's pretty subtle. And there it is. So the other way around, a tiny little bit of the extra frequencies. Here's our 5K kind of focal point. That's where we've set our high frequency range, but it's operating in both directions, got a little blue haze. That's that warm colour, that extra little bit of saturation that people are looking for with this setting. So the world of filters and EQs is a really rich and multifaceted one, and it's why I use multiple different plugins to achieve different results, because even though they look like they all contain very similar kinds of controls, the implementation of that particular piece of equipment and its idiosyncrasies is what's really getting you to the end result. And in the case of the Pultec, it's become pretty much an industry standard. Hope the video has been useful to you today. Please check out the Patreon and channel member links below if you'd like to help support my channel. I'll see you again. Thanks very much.